Well, 2022 just started.
Mm-hmm.
2021 ended. It's no different from 2020 because COVID still happened, new variants, people die, people get born. So recently the Pope said something about this.
Yep.
He said that not enough babies are being born and not enough couples are actually having babies. And he says more of them are turning to pets rather than having babies, calls them selfish. Do you think they are selfish?
I think that really stood out to me, the word selfish, So I think it was very, very strong. I mean, it's hard to tell, and based on what we see online, there was a huge uproar, both from pet lovers and even in couples and individuals. So I don't think they're selfish. It's your approach, and I think there's more to children or population control than just looking at pets.
I believe that the Pope did not make a true universal statement. One, because there's an overpopulation in ASEAN, there's an overpopulation in Indonesia. We have overpopulation in China, where the birth control is still one per couple. We have overpopulation in India. Then in lesser known countries like Iran, there's still an overpopulation, and they can't manage the population. The government is not able to cope with the growth. One. So when he said that people are selfish and they're not having enough children, which segment is, or which sector in this world, or which country is he targeting? Is it the first world country? Is it the upcoming countries with the new economic power, or the poorer third world countries? So I really can't understand. But if you say that people are turning into pets, one, maybe they have reasons not to have children. They can't afford it, like in Singapore, it's hard to raise a child. Maybe they can't have children and they have issues with adopting a child. So hence they turn into pets, as they are so-called the surrogate children, something like that, like extension of the family. So I'm not sure if the Pope make a true universal statement.
I have to correct you there because China has opened up its policies. Now they are letting the couples have 2 or 3 children at most.
True. That's because they realize that when they control the birth of each family, then no one is having more than a child, and no one is having enough babies to continue the legacy of China per se, as the middle country.
So the issue is more replacement. They are already overpopulated, but
then
they don't have. So I think if you look at the world statistics, there's not enough replacement. There's the aging population, and then you have the young. So like 1/5 of the population is having to support the other 4/5.
If you look at us in Singapore, when we have baby boom in the 1970s, the government came and said that stop at 2. Having to realize later that we do not have enough to recover, to replace. Hence, school starts to merge. Everything starts to become smaller. And say, hey, now they are encouraging have more children. So which is right, which is wrong? And when you look into the economic spectrum right now, it's really expensive to raise a child. I'm talking about in specific in Singapore. Can we really afford to have more than 2 children? Where you can raise a child with good education, with good family upbringing, with the best that we can provide for the child, or you want to raise a child with that, okay, maybe let's live like an average person, lower than the necessary.
Yeah, so that's why I think where a lot of people they just jump on the bandwagon of the word selfish. I think the Pope was really concerned from an economic, from a livelihood perspective. He just wanted people to say, hey guys, you can choose a pet or choose having a kid. Why don't you just go for a kid? I think not knowing of the backlash that we have seen, I think he may have chosen his words wrong, but I think the focus of his speech was to encourage people to say, hey, you guys need to reproduce, both from an economic, from a social, but he came from a different angle, from a human experience perspective. He talked about no man or woman is born a mother or a father. Fatherhood and motherhood is you grow into it, you learn to it, and that builds certain humanistic skills or skill sets of character But I stand corrected because having a pet also does that.
Yes,
Yeah, so I
having
think
a pet
that's
as
the issue,
well.
no? That's why people are unhappy with his statement. But I think he meant well, but they just keep jumping on the word selfish. So
Hang on then. So having a cat and having a child, you're telling me it's equal.
I wouldn't say it's equal. It's more building of your the nurturing side of you. Like you wouldn't have a cat and not nurture it, or a kitten. It's the same with having a child. You don't just have a child and not nurture it. You know, it's like you only play with a kid when you have time, and just probably keep the child in the room, just like you would if you are too busy.
But still, if you raise a child, you can see the child grow, the child will do good, just like the values that you impart on that child, you can see that grow, and you can continue the legacy. You were raised as a good person, you raise another good child to be a good person that continues the legacy of doing good in this world. But if you were to raise a pet, be it a dog, a cat, or any animals for that matter, how are you going to continue that legacy of doing good in this world?
It's the same argument. Like, if you can't have a child because of some medical reason, right? Then how are you going to continue that legacy? You know, husband and wife can't have a kid, and here is somebody saying that, oh, you can't have a child, you have a pet, that's very selfish of you. I would get angry too, because I try my utmost best to have a child, but I couldn't. I couldn't carry on my legacy because of that. Then how would you explain that?
There's always adoption. Now, we talk about doing good deeds, right? Usually a mom or a mother would give birth to a child and raise them. That's what mothers should be. But it's about raising a child that makes you a mother or a dad. So it doesn't matter whether it's your child or it's someone else's child that you raise. I think the values would be different when you raise a pet. Yes, you signify the case. I'm doing good for a child, I'm doing good for a pet. But which one can continue the good deeds that you have done in this world?
So you're looking from the point of view of a pet being more of a companion, someone that can spend time with you, play with you, keep you occupied. Whereas for a child, there is a more economic, more legacy aspect to it.
See, we all have our family values, we all have our family nucleus, mother, child, then grandchildren, you know, you continue, and you want to see those people grow into good people, and you know, when you die, someone take over and run the whole meal, run the whole dynamics again. But a pet can't do that. They will be there, they will keep you companion, but they can't take care of you, right? But then again, it raises one question: do you raise a child just to take care of you, or you raise the child just to be a good independent person?
Yeah.
And coming back to the Singapore context,
Yes.
both husband and wife work because
True.
they have a career. Who raises the child? The maid. So whose value is going to continue when you have the help, the foreign domestic help raising your child? Her legacy will be carried on in this child, not yours. Think about that.
I think that's where you brought up, if you cannot do it, you cannot afford it, you shouldn't, right? Have a pet or even a child. I think that's also another condition to look at, right?
Under the Singapore context, it's not easy to raise a child.
Yes.
Parents are somehow pushed to work so that they could fit in the basic economy of living in Singapore. That is to raise the child in the household, to provide education, and to do all those goods. But it will be cheaper to raise a pet. But if you can't raise a child properly, you need to impart your values, then let someone raise them. So the maid, like you mentioned, yes, the maid has to take care of the child, but it doesn't have to be the maid's value. It can be your values imparted inside. The maid is just as a caregiver, but not as someone who raised a child.
So,
Yeah, but the problem is that you're not there. Every time when you come back from work, the child's already asleep. So there's no way to impart any value except on Saturday and Sunday, but it's too short. By then, the child might have imbibed the help's value, the neighbor's value, but not yours.
So you are agreeing with the Pope saying that it's selfish?
No, I'm not agreeing with the Pope either, because if you don't have the financial means, you don't have the social means, you don't even have the means in terms of time, don't have a child. It's not being selfish. If you have a child and you don't have the time, the financial means, or even to impart your own values, then of course you're having a child
just for the sake of it.
just for the sake of having a child. That is selfish.
What makes you more wholesome, raising a child or raising a pet? As a person, which is more fulfilling?
If, let's say, if I can afford it, yes, why not raise a child? But if I feel that majority of my time is at the office working, then why have a child when you cannot even interact, impart values or love? Similarly, why have a pet too? If I were to work long hours and if I come back home, the pet will be the one that's suffering because it's lonely, no one's at home. So in terms of that, I would say the word selfish comes in. But when you have a choice of having a kid or having a pet, that choice is up to the individual, and I don't think it's anything to be selfish about. Because if you were to look at the cost of raising a child in Singapore, it's pretty high. It goes into, if you look at the West, once when the child is 18, it's like, thank you, good night, and it's your life. But in Singapore, the father, the mother would still have to pay for the child's education right till after university, whether it's local or overseas. And if you can't afford, you would probably only have one child, and like the Pope says, one child is not enough. You're still very selfish. If you have more children, you create some sort of a discord, because you might say, okay, number 2 kid is smarter than the rest. I would support her all the way to the university, but number 3, she's a bit playful. No, she gets to go to work when she's 18. So somehow there's sowing discord as well. So no.
But I think that's the beauty, of having a child, or having many children. You have to make those decisions, Actually, the decision making starts even before you have the child. A lot of people tell me that, hey, may not have enough money, I want to change my career. If you take everything into consideration, you may never have the time. It will never be the right time to have a child. You just have to take the plunge. If you really want to, you and your partner make the decision, and you work through it, because parenting, fatherhood, motherhood is a journey. There is no right template that says you must have a prerequisite of 100,000, this, then you qualify for a child, because that learning journey will shape you as a parent and will also shape the child, having to share with another sibling and stuff like that. So it's a journey. So a lot of people will say, hey, not enough money, no, I'm just starting my career, but it's a choice you have to make, and also the sacrifices, So a lot of people say, yeah, not right time, not enough money. I said, we will never be ready. There is no guidebook. You have to learn day by day.
But in Singapore, right, you need to be economically ready to have more than a child. What have you got to say for that?
But this cost is not unique to, let's say, Singapore, Australia, but you have families getting by. Yes, there's a cost, You have families getting by either by altering their academic pathways, you start later. So there are different mechanisms. So I think it's very Singaporean mentality. Say, oh, I need this amount. We need to set aside. So to me, every day is a new discovery. I mean, yes, we need to plan, we need to make sure we have funds and stuff like that. But there are other factors to consider, and there are other solutions. And it's how you work it out and how you grow. And I think that's where the Pope was always trying to say that's the human aspect, the humanizing of relationship, the developing of character.
So even in a highly competitive country economically like Singapore, you think it's okay to raise more than a child? Some parents are responsible, they have good earnings, they can raise more than a child, bring up the values. Some parents can't, but yet they want to have a lot of children. Now, I want to ask you, raising up a child with good quality values versus just raising a child, which one would you choose?
Definitely, of course, with good values, correct. But I think we are in a society that we are not going to control. There are examples of attempts to control the type of babies who can give birth. I think we've gone past that, and it boils down now to society. Do we want to create a new model, or I would call it a new kampong model, where we grew up, or my grandparents grew up in a kampong where everybody looked out for each other. There was that collective help, to look out. You got enough food, we give you. I think that whole collectiveness is missing, and I think that's where family values and having families within a society can actually elicit a change. I think we need to bring back that modern times. And yes, people say not enough money. I do not know how to bring up a child. But if we can create, maybe say in Singapore context where, a collective where there are play groups, play dates within the block. You can share your clothes, pass me down, or hand me downs and stuff like that. But it's a societal approach rather than saying, oh, every family got to look after yourself. We stay away from people. So I think it's a larger question that we should be talking about. Yes, we always say government must provide subsidy and stuff like that, and to encourage population growth, bring down costs. But that's looking at a very singular pathway, which is traditional. One family, how much can I support one family? But if we start thinking collective, if we start thinking from a society perspective, I think there might be an opportunity for change. And it's already happening on Facebook groups, on interest groups where families share, hand-me-downs, and we do it within families, within friends. I think that's something that really can help change how we view each other, how we share, and most importantly, as parents, how you behave, how you relate. You are examples to your children who would continue your legacy or continue their values or spread the values. Because if you teach a child, the child will go back and teach the family, and it just keeps going and going and going. And I think that's an opportunity that if we want to look at a larger issue on this topic, that we can look at.
Yeah, but then again, in Singapore, we have yet to move towards that direction in a collective manner.
Yeah,
we have pockets of it. We have good people who believe in sharing good values in raising a child, but it doesn't transcend to everybody.
Correct.
Right? People are still afraid. People are still afraid that they are not able to give the best to your children. So hence the reason why they do not want to have more than what they can handle. Usually one maybe is like too lonely for a child, then let's have a pair, boy or a girl, and that's done. Right? Because you have first child, you raise the child, go to school, blah blah blah, cost you more than 100 over 1,000. Then let's say go to medical school. Then there's a second child. Economically, is she or he able to follow that path of having a good education? So these are the things which I think a lot of people are like, oh, then how? So many.
Yep.
It's like somebody has to take the brunt of it. Keke go to you, then you work first, like that. So, but is it fair for the child? It's like I raised a child, the first child with grade A possibilities than child number 3 with grade A plus C and E because I can't afford it anymore. I'm getting older, I'm not able to afford it. Then that's where the disparity comes about. I'm not sure if it's selfish to have a pet, but I think raise a child is still better than raising a pet, but do not raise what you can't handle. If you're not ready to be a parent or a pet owner, then you should not even indulge in it.
Is that a rite of passage? Gives you the necessary skills to become a parent?
No.
Why not?
You see, I have a friend who bought for his kids hamsters, and the condition was you must be responsible, clean the cage, feed the fella, wash him, and stuff like that. So that it's a means to equip
To be
you
a responsible child, yes.
Yes.
To tell the child it's good to impart love, to be responsible, impart love, and take care, be caring, yes. But you don't raise the pet to go to school. There's no education progress towards that. Now that's the whole process of the child receiving your values and living it and passing it on.
But it might give you a confidence. You know, if you can successfully look after a living being or living animal, you know how to care. You have that care. You have that built-in. Hey, where's him? Something is wrong, or he's walking awkwardly, or you're able to identify an issue with a living being, and then that also help in child care or child.
But doesn't make
development.
you a parent. Does that make you a parent?
You are sort of parenting the pet, don't you think? Because, you know, if you have a dog from the time it is a puppy, and you have to teach, impart obedience, impart goodness to the dog, that the dog grow up to be less, not even aggressive only when it's protecting the family. You're sort of teaching the dog as well. So let's say as a single person and you have a cat or a dog, you learn to love unconditionally.
Okay.
And when you get married and you have a baby, you impart that unconditional love as well. So I would agree with Kevin, having a pet sort of prepares you to become a parent.
True, it prepares you to become a parent, it prepares the child to be a better person, but does the pet replace the child? If we come back to what the Pope says, like it's selfish to just have a pet when you can have a child. It's selfish to have pets when you can have children. So that's the pets, with all the values that you are able to impart on that animal, but that make you a good parent. That's a child or children equates the pets.
True. I mean, it's apple and orange lah. But I would say having a pet and the values that it impart, I think I would say that it's not being selfish. I mean, the fear is there. If you have the funding and the capabilities to have more children, and you just choose not to have children because if I want to go on holiday, where do I send? And if you make those decisions because of your convenience, then you're borderline on being selfish, because it's you yourself come first, you know. But if you are choosing and saying, hey, I might not be ready, and you have that financial aspects in your decision making, then I don't think it's a selfish decision. It's selfish if you are choosing not to because, hey, I don't want to scar my body, I want to go on holidays as and when I want. Because a lot of times I feel these individuals or these young individuals are living in the present. You know, they don't see it when they grow old. What happens? You talk about legacy, you talk about heritage. I mean, people don't see. And you realize, and they will realize later on in life that, shit, if I only had a child, I could achieve this, I could do this, or I could someone. So I think it's also their sphere or their stage in life where they don't realize. Because now it's millennials party, go out, do this, do that. But if you grow old, who's going to look after you? And they don't think of all these questions.
So in short, you say we should not be myopic in our vision.
Everyone shouldn't be, but we can't fault it because that's all they know at that point of their life. You know.
So I guess the Pope did not choose his words properly. It should be instead of having children, you decide to indulge in yourself, then you are selfish.
Yeah.
You know, rather than instead of having children, you have pets. That makes you selfish.
Some people are very deliberate. It's inconvenienced me. I'm not going to have a child. They see a child as an inconvenience because it is an inconvenience, you know, at that juncture. But as they grow older, you know, it is inconvenient because I got to stop, got to feed, you know, you got to clean the shit and stuff like that. But people don't see that. Hey, yeah, that is a growing up. But once they grow up, they become an individual, they become your companion, they become your friend. It's a different thing. But like I said, a lot of people don't see. They are very myopic and they say, now, today is, I want to go out on Friday night, I want to go out. No. So that's the problem I see. It's your choice.
I mean, interesting.
Oh,
I want to ask you.
A lot of questions for me.
I want to ask you. You believe in big families.
Yes.
Right?
Seven.
A lot of us also believe in big families. When you get married and about to have a family, right? The first child, do you see the child at the end of the whole process, or say, oh, I have a baby now, then I learn as I go day by day, or say, oh, this child is going to be like this. The vision is right till adulthood.
I see it as a long-term vision.
Yeah.
So that's why first and foremost, I don't look at one, at least two or more. You know, basically also from a companion perspective. You know, one child, all they look for you is you are the only person that they can come to. But two, they can learn, they can play together. 3, 4, they form their own communities. So even my fourth child, I would say it's not my child because it's my 1, 2, and 3 child because they spend so much more time on it. But it's having a plan because growth and development is something that you need to be very deliberate. At what stage of their life you want to expose them to what, and it's like I think I come from a science background where it's very deliberate intervention where I want a child to learn certain skills, achieve certain language, have certain growth and development outcomes. Then it's very deliberate. So it's more planned and it's about exposing them. I think it's very often people say, hey, your child is living your dream, but it's more of exposing them and letting them choose.
Yeah, but you are someone who is economically able.
Not when I first started, you know.
Share with us.
Yeah, it's not when you first start. So it's like I said, you will never be ready. So we have had this discussion, and I was very deliberate to have kids very young, because I know people who are in their 50s and going to work, having to worry about university because we saw the data is about 250,000, and I want to be still working and not worrying about retiring, or I cannot retire because my child. Because I've spoken to a lot of older friends, and they like my child is going to uni, you know, and I need to keep working. I cannot stop, you know. So I was very conscious to have kids at a very, very young age, and I didn't have much money, no. But it was a deliberate, because if I delayed it and sought to grow my career, I would only probably have 1 or 2 kids, you know, because as you add up, I would be having to still work at 60 years old to send my child to uni. So it was very deliberate. So I had my children very young. Very young.
Something has got to give, right? It's either
Sacrifice,
your
yeah.
dream and your career path for your family, or the other way around, right? So you have your career, or you have your kid later, or you have your kids, then you somehow readjust your career path.
Correct. So I think that's where it's about being human. You know, where being human is about caring, it's about sacrificing. You know, it's all these things that comes into play. So it's you don't have a human syllabus or course in university. You live. You know, there's no guidebook. You know? There's no guidebook on how to be a parent. You know, I made mistake with first, second, third, fourth. I cannot use the same template for 4. I cannot use the same template for number 2. And every day is a new thing. It's a new thing, and you got to think on the spot. You try and error, hopefully nothing happens. But it is that being human to being facing challenges, making choices, and then just executing and see how it happens and then reacting. And it's spending time understanding that person A is different from person B. They're all different. Even though they're from the same house, same parent, same food, they all are different.
So it's okay to have a child if you can afford it. It's okay to have children if you can afford it. One would be the emotional capital, then the economic capital of it. Then the same goes if you can't have children, then you have pets.
Not really. It boils down to okay. So every child is you have to balance you making sure you have enough money. At one point in time I had to sell my car so that I can cover the 12,000 for the delivery. And then after that we said, okay, how do we figure it out? Do we cut? Do we reuse? So there are choices where we had to make. Because we were young, we were just starting the career. We were only like 2-3 years into our jobs. So we had to sell our car or downgrade the car just to make sure we can afford it. So that's a key thing. Yes, as we grew, as our careers developed, we could afford it.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the money at the start. So we came to a crossroad. Okay, do we think we can afford one more? Okay, we can. We move on. So it's having a crossroad. But back to what we talked about, if you cannot afford it, you cannot give that quality of life, you shouldn't. You shouldn't have, I want a family of 7, but yet the family suffers so much.
I'm not talking about just economy, I'm talking about the emotional
yes, the emotional.
If you can't raise a child properly,
Correct.
then you should not be having one and
Correct.
ruin the child's life.
Yes.
I mean, I'm talking about the Singapore context, right? If you cannot at least give a decent basic education, the child can't survive here.
Yeah.
It may be different in some of the ASEAN countries where you can survive without having a full education and overseas education, because you can live life in a different capacity.
Yep.
But in Singapore, it's just very different.
Yep.
So the Pope is not truly correct.
So like you, taking you back to what you say, when you have a child, you want your child to carry on your legacy.
Yes.
You are a good person.
Yes.
You want to raise a good person.
Yes.
Now, let me take you to the United States.
Okay.
There are some parents who are good people. Yet, the son goes to school with an Uzi and shoots down his classmates because he's been bullied. The mother tries to raise a good child. She's a good person. And then this happens.
From where I'm talking about my background, from where I was raised, environment changes you. And we also believe the fact that 70% of what the child or the children would learn is at home, it's not in school. So if your child is believed to be in a different or a bad environment, take that child out of that environment and move them to a proper environment. I don't blame the mother. Maybe the mother is not well enough to understand that environment changes the child. So if you can't afford to put your child in a good environment, then you need to start paying more attention to it. Because whatever that you learn is at home. The child learns from you and not what you teach them.
Correct. So actually, I agree on that. Especially in the US, it's you are out of the house at a very young age. In the Asian family, you are retained in the house longer.
Not anymore in Singapore.
No?
Not anymore, because look, the child is, after when the mother has finished her 4 months of maternity leave, there's no other family members to care for the child. Where does he go?
Correct.
Nursery care. So when he comes back, you try to impart your goodness, your values to the child. But he spends most of his days at nursery care, then child care, then carry on after school care, because you are working.
True.
So again,
So you want to go first?
Yeah, you first.
I have a very strong view on that, and
Okay.
it's the developmental aspect. When I had my first child, and I was like very protective, nobody can touch, can't do this, can't do that. But you realize that they are babies, they are organisms, they eat, sleep, shit. No, you can't really impart anything. It's only when they start to understand, when they're older, they can reason, and that's only much later in life. So I was so focused on giving attention, trying to influence the person or the child when they were young, but the actual character building comes later on. And I think that's where the parent and back to the US example, you need to spend time to understand why and how that child works, and then as a parent you need to just pray to God that you have done your best to equip the child with character, coping strategies, an ability to reason, and you need to let them go.
I give you this example. If I send Kevin to a preschool, he come back swearing in all 4 languages, I will put him out of that school and in an environment where he will not be swearing anymore.
Yep.
So you need to make sure that environment plays
It's very deliberate.
the values.
Very deliberate. Yeah, but like I think what Judith's mentioning is also you're not there. I've gone to meet the people session where the child is brought up by grandparents and the grandparents are not educated and the cycle just keeps going and going on. I think that's where I always feel that it's a community. The community has to come together and really, really help. And we are seeing society breaking down because of the family nucleus not being strong or not being existent. Because you said, because parents are handing it over to the maid to look after. But what's even more serious I've seen is that the parents don't even see the child until the weekends.
yes.
And I always tell them, I said, if you don't see your child and only see them over the weekends, how are you going to understand and know what your character of your child? How is the child going to see you as a role model? I said, you may enjoy weekdays, every day can go out, have dinners and stuff, but when the child grows up, you don't have that connection. And when the child is in the teens or when they
It's
grow,
worse.
you are childless because the child don't see you as a parent and you never understood. So it's that sacrifice as a parent.
So parents must understand that as much as you own the child, it takes the whole village to raise a child. So we need to bring back that fabric. We need to strengthen that community fabric that your child is mine at the same time to grow.
And if you don't have, I know of families who don't have that fabric, that's where the community comes in. And I don't know, from a physiological development, growth and development, there are key stages in a child's life. You need to be exposed. You learn languages best before 4 years old. You learn a motor skill at 4 to 7. You find motor skills later on and you pick up a skill later on. The research and science is there, but we are leaving it to individuals. I mean, you don't have a sports science background. Neither do you. You may not know to expose a child. So I think that's where society now, given that we are aware of individuals' growth, why don't we be very deliberate so that we can equip the next generation with the right skills, but be more deliberate. But we are not, or we may not have the resources, time, or powers to be, may not be interested.
So you're
in
telling
that.
me we need to break this whole chain and start clustering and raise the child as a community.
I think so, and I think it will really help, and it would help solve certain fabric of society issues.
Back in the olden days, right?
Yes, and it worked then. It really worked then, and when we all moved away from kampong to HDBs, we were all silos. We were complaining. So that became the Singapore culture.
So the problem also is if you look at the 2-room, 3-room flats, it's all common corridor. You know who's living next to you or who's down the corridor. Then if you move higher to the 4-room, 5-room, even to the condos, it's at the stairwell where there's only one neighbor. And if that neighbor shuts her door, you shut yours, you don't know what's going on. So it's strange that you say this, because kampong, one room, two room flats, there's still that spirit. Children running around,
Yep.
families are colorblind, but as soon as you go up the social ladder, it's become siloed.
Yep.
So how do you actually break that? Because up the social ladder, these are the powers that be.
Yep. I see a change in society happening, but it's more for the seniors. They have senior activity centers downstairs and stuff. So it can be done. No? Singapore is one of the only few countries where you have abundant void decks. You know, where the citizens are in close proximity to one another. It can be done. It's just whether the creativity, the willingness. But it's not say, oh, I'm throwing my child to you. You know, like you said, the child learns 70% from the family.
Yes.
The school is just there to teach. But a lot of parents are saying, this is your job, school, not mine, which is wrong. So I think parents also need to be educated.
Perhaps like yourself, the Pope is throwing a spanner in the works so that this discussion can go on.
Yeah.
Similar discussions can go on everywhere else in the world.
Yeah. So it's not selfish for you to my personal view, to choose a pet over a child. But based on what we discussed earlier, it is selfish if it's for your self-interest. But if you know that you can only afford, or you have reached a certain age where you're not childbearing and you don't want to bring another child because you want to adopt because, hey, no, I cannot afford it, or I'm already in my 40s or 50s. Yeah, not selfish, because based on circumstances, costs, you have not met the right person. So I think that statement was not right, and I think it was meant to stir discussions like this.
I think it's deliberate, so that people will start talking about it and look back into our values as a person and as parents, and also about parenting and parenthood.
I think he just clickbait lah. He just wanted the media to pick it up, like what we fell for it lah.
Thank you.